What if the very thing that you're waiting for is the very thing that's keeping you stuck? Think about that for a second. You're standing there waiting for things to settle, waiting for things to clear, waiting for a sign. And the whole time, you think you're being wise. But what if waiting is actually the trap? You see, you waiting for the right time just might be fear. I know, we call it being careful. We call it being wise. We say, oh, I'm just praying about it. But sometimes, if we're honest, it's just fear. And that is doing damage to the very future that God wants to give us. You know, fear doesn't always look like fear. Sometimes it's disguised. Sometimes it looks like patience. Sometimes it looks like planning, like I'm just planning. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous, because it hides in plain sight. And so in this video, I'm going to share with you a verse that will expose that quiet fear behind your stalling and give you the courage to take action anyway. If you've ever wanted to start that business or apply for that dream job or walk into the calling that you know God has placed on your life, but you keep waiting for the ideal conditions, this video is for you. And by the end of this video, you won't just have a better understanding, you'll know exactly what to do next time fear tries to convince you that you're just watching and waiting on God. See, somebody watching this video right now has something in their hand and they're not doing anything with it because they've been waiting on the perfect time. And you've been waiting for months, maybe years. Maybe it's the business idea that you keep researching and researching, but you never get the business started. Maybe it's the ministry that you know you should start. And you've just been waiting for the right time, for everything to line up just perfectly. And you've been talking about writing that book forever, but you just keep waiting until you can figure out the perfect title and the perfect colors for the book and all that type of stuff. And all of us, we all have something in our hand. And most of us have a very good excuse for why today is not the day to do something with it, to do something with what's in our hand. So here's the problem. If we keep waiting for the perfect conditions, we may never do anything at all. And so what does God actually say about this? Well, let's go to Ecclesiastes and we're going to look at just one verse. Ecclesiastes 11:4. Now, in Ecclesiastes 11:4, what this verse is talking about here, before I read it, is talking about a farmer. And, you know, in the Bible days, it was all about farming and agriculture and all that. And so it's talking about a farmer who, you know, a farmer is supposed to plant seeds, sow seeds, and then that's how they ate. That's how they ate. That's still how we eat today. A lot of things is somebody got to plant something. Plant the seed. Like if you're going to eat some apples, you got to plant an apple tree. You got to plant the apple seeds. If you're going to eat some whatever fruit you're going to eat, you got to plant the seeds. And then you grow that crop. Whatever it is. If you want a garden, you got to plant the seeds in the garden to grow the garden. And so this verse is talking about a farmer. Now, this is what it says. It says talking about the farmer, this is Ecclesiastes 11:4. He who watches the wind will fail to sow, and he who observes the clouds will fail to reap. Now let's break that down. Why does watching the clouds and the wind keep a farmer from sowing his seed in the ground? Well, picture this. Picture a farmer standing at the edge of his field. The bag of seed is right there, resting against his leg. But he's not moving. He's not doing anything at all because he's too busy staring up at the sky, watching every little breeze, waiting for the the right time, waiting for the air and the wind to be completely still before he plants a single seed. See, here's the problem with that. The wind is never completely still. Like, you might not feel it, but the wind is never completely still. And to give you just a little bit more context, in the Bible days, the farmers, they actually needed some wind to sift their grain. But too much wind while they're trying to sow the seeds could actually scatter the seed, and it'll just blow in the wind. And so that's what they were afraid of. If it's real windy, obviously if it's real windy, then yeah, your seed is going to scatter in the wind. And so obviously it's not ideal to be out there when it's just 100-mile-an-hour winds. And so the farmer had to learn to work wisely with the wind, but that doesn't mean you got to wait for the wind to completely disappear. And so a farmer who demands perfect stillness before he'll plant anything will still be standing there when the season ends and the ground is still empty because he has not planted anything. And see, Proverbs 22 and 13, it paints the same picture, but it's talking about a different thing. It's talking about a lazy person, right? A lazy person, it says the slacker says there's a lion outside and I might get killed if I go to work. And so this is a lazy person who's coming up with an excuse to go to work because he's saying a lion might be out there to kill me. Now, that sounds, if a lion is outside, obviously that is a reasonable concern. If in fact a lion is outside, that's a reasonable concern. But what are the chances that a lion is outside, right? So that's really just an excuse because this person was lazy and didn't want to go to work. It's the same thing as us saying today, I don't want to go to work because a plane might fall out of the sky and hit me. It's reasonable, but what are the chances that would actually happen? That's just a really, really lame excuse. And then James 1 and 6 describes what it looks like when you have a doubting heart. It says a doubting heart is like the wave of the sea. It's blown around, by the very thing that the farmer is trying to study, the wind. And it never settles enough for you to move in any direction at all. And so the first thing I want you to take away here is fear will always give you a reasonable sounding reason to stay still, to do nothing. But a reasonable sounding excuse is still an excuse at the end of the day. I don't care how reasonable it sounds, it's still an excuse. And so the farmer who waits for the wind to fully stop will be standing there in an empty field come harvest time. He won't have nothing. And so now let's think about this. What happens when we refuse to sow because we're just waiting on whatever? What happens? Well, sowing simply, let's talk about what sowing is. Sowing simply just means taking the first step, putting your seed in the ground, and oftentimes you put it in the ground before you can see what it'll actually become. Like, we don't know what it'll become. All thing we can do is just plant it, right? Now, when we talk about seed here, seed can be so many things. What's your seed, right? Now, your seed could be your gifts, your talents, whatever ability that you have, right? You have to sow those seeds in the ground of whatever you want. And so seeds can be many things. It can be so many things. Now, in the parable of the sower in Matthew 13, that seed is the word of God. And it's talking about the sower scattered the seed and plant, and some of the seed fell on rocky ground. Some of the seed fell on the pathway. Some of the seed fell on thorny ground. But the thing about it is the farmer in that story did not wait for guaranteed results. He sowed anyway. He didn't wait for perfect conditions. Even though some of the seed blew in the wind and fell on rocky ground, thorny ground, the thorns choked the seed out, he still sowed anyway, right? And so here's the thing you got to know. Refusing to sow the seed does not protect you from loss. In fact, it guarantees that you will have loss because you won't reap anything if you don't sow. And so no seed in the ground always means no crop later. Now, that's not a punishment from God. That's just how a field works. If you don't sow a seed, you get no harvest. Right? 2 Corinthians 9:6 says, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. And whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Now, let's take that even further. Whoever sows nothing will also reap nothing. And so what you have to take away here is opportunity almost never looks ideal when it shows up. It never looks ideal. Almost never. Sometimes it does. But you can't always count on opportunity to look so perfect and good for you to take it. But you have to be obedient, because obedience is not measured by how much you analyze the situation. Obedience is measured by whether you actually took action and planted something in the ground. Now, why is, he says the farmer is sitting there staring at the wind, and then he's staring at the clouds. And so why is staring at the clouds just as costly as staring at the wind? Now, because here's the thing, he's staring at the clouds because he's looking at some dark clouds. Dark clouds could mean that it's about to rain. It could mean that. Or it could just mean that it's an overcast. It's just dark cloud. It's just a cloudy day. Sometimes it don't mean nothing at all. Like you've seen those days where it's just overcast. It's just dark clouds, but not a drop of rain fell. And so when you're sitting there looking at the dark clouds, and you wait and you wait and you wait, try to get 100% certainty out of a sky that was never designed to give you 100% certainty, because 100% certainty cannot come from the sky. And so in Matthew 16, Jesus rebukes the religious leaders who were experts at reading the sky. They were experts at the weather. They were experts, but they was completely blind to what God was doing right in front of them. And so Jesus said, you know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you don't know the times, you don't know the signs of the times. And so what does that mean? It means that they could predict the weather, but they missed the moment that they were in. They missed the moment they missed what God was doing. Now, meanwhile, Genesis 8:22 tells us that as long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest shall never cease. And so the clouds don't give the final vote. God's faithfulness does. God says, as long as there's an earth, there will always be seed time and harvest. And so the takeaway here is watching the sky can be wise when it leads you to take action at the right time. But it becomes foolish the moment it becomes an excuse to never do anything at all. And so what do we actually lose when we don't reap? Like when we don't take advantage of reaping? Well, the harvest does not wait forever. The harvest does not wait for you to feel ready. When there's a harvest, you got to go get the harvest. When the grain is ripe, it has to be cut today. When the harvest is ready, it's ready. If you put it off, it's either like the wind is going to blow it away, or the birds going to come eat it, or it's just going to sit out there and rot. And so when it's harvest time, you got to get the harvest. Now, Proverbs 10:5 draws a sharp contrast between two types of people. It says, Proverbs 10:5 says, he who gathers in the summer is a wise son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. And so I don't know which one you want to be, but I want to be the wise son. And so one man secures the blessing that is sitting right in front of him, while the other man loses it because of his own hesitation. And then Galatians 6:9, it promises that if we don't grow weary in doing good, that we will reap a harvest in due season. But only if we don't give up before the reaping ever happens. And so the takeaway here is the cost of hesitation is not neutral, but the cost of hesitation is a permanent loss. And so when you hesitate, what could have filled your barns gets left scattered and wasted in the field, all because fear convinced you to keep waiting for a sign that was never coming. And so, to summarize this, Ecclesiastes 11:4 exposes something that we don't like to admit. The wind watchers never plant, and the cloud watchers never gather a harvest. And both of them think that they're being careful, when really, they're just being afraid. They're being scared. Now, God is not calling you to be reckless. He's not calling you to be reckless and just do whatever and to make decisions and do things at the most inopportune time. That's not what this is about. He's actually calling you to trust his sovereign care enough to act in the present and leave the outcome in his hands, because the Lord of the harvest has never once failed to be faithful. And so here's what I want to challenge you with. What is the field that you've been standing in front of and the seed that you got in your hand that you are refusing to sow because you wait on the perfect conditions? What is that seed for you? Is it a calling? Is it a commitment to something? You see, you have to stop watching the wind long enough to actually look down at the seed that's already sitting in your hand. You don't need perfect conditions. You just need one obedient step. You just take the seed, one action, one phone call, one application, and plant it before this week is over. Not when it feels safe, not when the sky finally clears. Do it now, while the ground is still in front of you and the season has not passed you by. And so I'll just say this. Imagine what could happen if we stopped waiting for perfect conditions and started walking in faith. Imagine what could happen if every believer used the gift that God gave them and sowed that seed in the world, in somebody's life, instead of hiding it because you're scared. Imagine what could happen in our communities if people stopped being scared and started the business to serve your community. What would happen if you stopped being scared and started that ministry to help people who need what you got? What would happen? I know what would happen. We would see harvest after harvest after harvest. And so what I'm telling you is stop waiting for the perfect conditions. The wind will never be fully settled. The clouds will never be fully clear. But the Lord of the harvest is still faithful. So plant your seed, sow in faith, and trust God for the harvest. And so I hope this blessed you. I hope this was helpful for you. If it is, please share this with somebody. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.